We did an introductory podcast last week.
I heard.
Sans Matt Green, very well received. Made me question if we needed you, honestly. I feel like I could have carried it on my own, but
I really appreciate the insurmountable imposter syndrome.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's what we want to do. My goal is to emphasize any anxiety and stress you have about this to make it more real, okay? Because this is the stress of emergency management.
Well,
so this is EM Weekly, officially EM Weekly relaunched.
Yes.
With our cool new branding and our cool new hosts. And for those of you who listened to last week's episode, we have not changed the format since then. We are sticking with two EM people talking about EM stuff while doing EM stuff. In fact, I believe Matt was literally receiving phone calls about hurricane stuff up into the start of this conversation. So,
yes.
With that said, it is September 26th. At 3:48 p.m. And as of the last update, there's some
Eastern
stuff
time.
brewing. There's some Eastern time. That's right. Eastern Standard Time. We are East Coast folks. There's some stuff brewing. Some scary stuff that I think as emergency managers we are locked on right now.
Yeah. This looks like it's, we're specifically talking about Hurricane Ian. It's a storm that's brewing in the Gulf. We're right now operating off of what, of course, the National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service, incredible organizations, and we're very lucky domestically that we have such a robust National Weather Service that's able to give the appropriate information at the right place, at the right time, the right way.
For free, well, tax dollars, but for emergency managers, this is the best resource you're going to get for free.
Yeah, so we're still working, as of right now, I'm still working off the key messages from 11 a.m.
Yes.
There may have been another one issued. I don't have it in front of me, but that's all just to say that, for emergency managers, we know what our CTAs, right? We're going to tell you the same thing that you're going to tell everybody else, which is this is a life-threatening storm with life-threatening storm surge. Listen to your local emergency managers. Listen to National Hurricane Center guidance. And if you're told to evacuate, evacuate.
Yeah. Don't mess around with this. So the thing I think maybe people forget. So I think there's this sort of perception that everyone in like the Southeast is just like used to hurricanes, which to a degree I think a lot of people are. There's much more exposure to tropical weather. However, the particular area that right now is looking like it's going to get hit is Tampa, the Tampa area. And I think that's Hillsborough County. They've already started issuing evacuation warnings, mandatory evacuation, because there's almost nowhere worse in Florida a hurricane could hit than Tampa for a lot of particular reasons. One is it is super developed. I mean, right up to the water in a lot of locations. I just saw something that like a Category 1 hurricane is going to, with, sort of standard Category 1 hurricane storm surge will impact about, for instance, just Apollo Beach, which I'm guessing is sort of a neighborhood, or would be considered a neighborhood. In a Category 1 hurricane, they anticipate 77% of this area to be hit. Just Apollo Beach, that's $1 billion in property.
Wow.
So super expensive properties. This is all the Tampa Bay Times, which is the local, newspaper there, has basically been tracking this for a while. The other day, they put out an article about the risks of Tampa Bay. Here's another area that they talked about, shore acres. So 3,200 properties there. How much of it will flood in a category hurricane? 98%. And that's another 1.4 billion. So just in these two neighborhoods, we're talking over $2 billion worth of damage potentially. So, and that's only a Category 1 hurricane. So a lot of it has to do with the fact that we've got, rising sea level. Tampa, I believe, is just sort of particularly low as far as like they kind of build right at sea level. Plus, I've never actually been to Tampa, but I have a family that I think have like vacation homes and stuff down there. The whole area, like there's tons of canals and stuff. Like that's how you get like in and out. Like everyone's got boats, super connected to the water. But the potential for just crazy damage is everywhere in the city. Here's another one: Madeira Beach, 1,900 properties, 98% will be impacted, flooded from a Category 1, almost $1 billion in damage. And the other thing that's really challenging is the fact that Florida has a pretty serious insurance crisis going on right now. So insurance, like,
Is this just flood insurance, or is this?
No, I think this is just has to do with like the losses and like trying to recoup money, but very, very high premiums on insurance plans that is putting people into pretty tough issues anyways, on top of like now this huge risk. So billions and billions of dollars worth of properties. Obviously, who cares about the money ultimately? Like a lot of lives potentially. The other thing is like a lot of Tampa's been built up relatively recently, right? The last time it's had a full landfalling sort of direct strike, I believe, was like 1912 or something. Or it's been over 100 years. So no one has that direct experience with a landfalling strong hurricane. Certainly there's been issues in the region, and Florida, again, just being what it is, definitely has experience with this. And I'm sure the Florida emergency management has been preparing and planning for something along these lines. But
for sure. I've seen the messaging even over the last few days. It's been pretty robust.
Well, the thing that's just, I don't know, it's if it continues on the track that it's at, it's hitting just one of the worst areas that could possibly be hit.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think has to be considered is the track, right? So if it stalls anywhere, if it shifts left or right, and in fact, we reposted a story from Ken Graham, who's the director of the National Weather Service. He did a thing on Disaster Tough talking about little wiggles and how impactful those are. Well, in this case, like, I think it's going to be, I mean, we're talking the difference between, maybe an area that could take the hit versus an area that can't, which potentially means billions and billions of dollars in losses, plus all of the risk to people getting in and out of there. So not great, but there's still time. Like, we're not at it. Like, by the time you hear this, something will have happened. This will come out on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So we're going to be tracking this. I think as emergency managers, especially EM Weekly, like, what do you think right now? Like, what are you doing if you're an emergency manager in the path of this?
I mean, so of course, this is all about communication. You can't communicate enough, and you can't communicate in enough vectors, venues, meeting people where they are. I think Dr. Rick Knabb posted earlier on Twitter that, don't wait for mandatory evacuation.
Yes.
Survivability is really all about understanding if you are in an evacuation zone, understanding if your area is going to flood, understanding your own vulnerability. And the further you have to go to evacuate, the longer it's going to take, of course. So inform, make sure you're informing your community as soon as you know what the call to action is. Make sure that they have the information to make an empowered decision, and make sure they understand when that window is going to close.
By the time you're listening to this, the window has closed. You might, maybe not. Maybe there's still some time. But the thing is, you're going to get on the road when the emergency response agencies are trying to stage stuff and get into areas. National Guard's going to be moving around. Roads are going to be closed. You're going to definitely start to see the impacts. If you have the means, this is sort of like, if you're a business owner or you work from home or you have the means, just let your people get out of there before they have to get out of there. And worst case scenario, if you leave, hopefully you've got some vacation time or something you can take. In worst case scenario, you were out of town for a day or two. But I think if you have the ability to leave. That also brings up the point, like, not everyone is going to have the means to leave.
Sure.
So you need to plan for those folks that can't. Certainly your vulnerable populations, people who are don't have homes, shelters to live in. And I know most communities have a plan for sort of sheltering those types of folks. But you also have hospitals, you've got long-term care facilities, you have jails and prisons, you've got all sorts of facilities that you need to take into consideration. And those things take a long time to plan. I just finished the 5 days at Memorial series.
How was that?
It was good. It was certainly dramatic, but it was actually kind of nice. So I read the book a long time ago, and if you haven't read the book, especially as an emergency manager, you should, because same type of scenario where they thought, as a lot of people did during Katrina, that perhaps that they'd be able to get away from this unscathed, and that was not the case. And in fact, it was the compounding issue of okay, the hurricane was bad, but they did fine. They did great. It was actually the failure of the levees later that flooded and basically took out all of their life support systems, and then they had to make the decision. I don't want to give it away because it's tragic, but I think it's really important to sort of get that shock value of what occurred there from reading or watching the series. But it was pretty good.
Sure.
But it was timely because obviously hurricane season has just basically finally fired off. We're kind of late in the year to really have to just start thinking about this, which can lead to some complacency and other stuff.
So we're in an interesting place, right? So we've had a relatively quiet, the Q word we've had a quiet Atlantic. But we're also coming off the tail of Hurricane Fiona striking Puerto Rico, where a lot of the practitioner messaging has been, rightfully so, don't use the category of a storm to predict its impact.
Yeah.
Because that really is, it's going to tell you the wind. It's going to allow you to predict certain metrics, but certainly not how much the rain that storm is holding, if it's going to stick around, and what the vulnerability of the region it's passing over might be. So what happens now when we have, coming off the tail of Category 1 Fiona saying, don't stress too much about the category, but also this next one is a major hurricane.
Yeah, I believe
that needs to mean something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the concern is it could be Category 4 and potentially higher. So there's the environment that it's coming into, low shear, tons of energy just ready to be soaked up by the storm. Not a lot. Cuba in the way right now, and Cuba is probably being impacted as we speak, actually, like pretty significantly. But it's not going to spend a whole lot of time over land and kind of get dragged on that. And potentially it could slow down. If you look at the sort of forecast model, it looks like things are going to kind of hang out there for a while. So even if it didn't get really strong, you're still going to have just tons and tons of storm surge and heavy rain just dumping on this area that's already super vulnerable. And Puerto Rico, by the way, we had actually recorded another episode last week and talked extensively about Puerto Rico and ended up kind of putting it off because technical glitches, all this other stuff. Regardless, Puerto Rico got hit really hard. We have to certainly keep them in the back of our minds because they're not out of the woods either. Like, there's still significant power outages. They're still dealing with all of the consequences of the 2+ feet of rain that they had. And unfortunately, the same kind of issues they ran into with this Hurricane Maria a few years ago are popping their heads up again.
I did want to have a segment on this show moving forward. I know this is like technically episode 1. We're trying to self-organize as we do and have.
We're very serious. Like, this is much more serious than I was kind of hoping we go into. But that's the job, man. Like, sometimes it's just like you got to get in it. We're in it.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the politics a little bit of Puerto Rico and understand how it impacts response. I do want to talk about the Jones Act. I want to talk about my experience in Puerto Rico. I spent several weeks there after Hurricane Maria and with an incredibly resilient community. I love Puerto Rico, and I would love to get back there. And it's terrible to see what they go through, and it's terrible to see problems that may have easier solutions than we're making here mainland more challenging for them. And we passed laws a long, long time ago to protect infrastructure, to protect homeland security, to protect commerce, and those laws and those acts right now are negatively once again impacting Puerto Rico as a territory. Should we bridge right into our segment?
Sure. I mean, so Hurricane Ian's happening again, real fast. Like communicate. I did a post on LinkedIn today. Document everything. Communicate in a way. So if you're telling your family to get out, this is one thing that always drove me crazy. Like you have these emergency managers where they go on TV and they're like, "We're thinking about it. We're not quite at that point, but damn well that they've already told their families to pack up and split." Like if you're telling your family to leave, tell your communities to leave. Be honest. Be open. Be very clear with that. The other thing is because this area hasn't been sort of walloped in a while, they need to. If I was an emergency manager, I'd start reading after action reports, like recent ones. What failed? What are the things that worked really well? Particularly because, again, Florida's had some significant impacts over the last few years. So there are some lessons learned you can draw from right there. Don't start from scratch. You probably have plans, even bad plans, somewhere to sort of begin. But I really think it's important to learn, from others who just went through it. So we're going to keep an eye on Hurricane Ian. We'll certainly be talking about this next week. So again, Puerto Rico was recently hit. They're now recovering. So go ahead and talk about the Jones Act and sort of the complications of that.
Yeah, I think that segment up top is what we're going to call the situation report. I think what's different from EM Weekly now than it had been in the past is I want to make sure that this is a contemporary update of what's happening in the field right now. Obviously, Hurricane Ian is first and foremost. There are some cyber updates that we'll provide in a bit that might end up being its own segment. But I want to make sure that if you're going to tune in as a practitioner, we're going to provide some contemporary things. What's going on? What's going on in your neck of the woods, and what are opportunities to learn? Maybe we'll talk about some after action reports. Talk about who's doing what out in the field. I know you guys covered a lot of this in your initial episode with John.
Well, there's a lot of people doing a lot of things right now. You've got USAR teams, you've got National Guard, you've got volunteer organizations.
My phone is blowing up.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But let's talk a little bit about the politics behind Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
A little thing called the Jones Act of 1920, which will be linked in our show notes. That's the first time I've ever been able to say that as a podcaster. That's kind of exciting. So, as like,
smash that like button.
For a while, I felt like the only 30-something left that didn't have a podcast. So here we are.
You were just secretly recording, like hoping that maybe it would find its way out onto the internet.
Here we go.
Official. Yeah.
I was leaving voicemails that said check the show notes.
My wife was just like, you don't stop talking. Why not just shove a microphone in front of your face and maybe other people will be interested? Because right now I'm not.
So here we are.
Yeah,
Jones Act. Technically, this refers to Section 27 of the Merchant Marine Act of 1920.
We all know that. Yeah, we're all familiar with it.
Obviously, this 100-year-old piece of legislation was originally enacted to preserve national merchant sea lift capability in case of war. So what this law requires is for ships carrying goods between U.S. ports to be U.S. flagged and at least 75% U.S. owned and operated. And they must be assembled entirely in the United States and made from domestically made components. So as I've read, as far as the domestically made components go, there's been a lot of leeway as far as being able to buy foreign engines or foreign steel.
Yeah.
So there's already been a lot of leeway with this particular act, especially for commerce and for cruise ships that come to, they may leave out of Florida, they may land in Puerto Rico, but then because they go to international ports, they're able to bypass this particular act. So a quick recap: it was meant to ensure that that vessels were built here, protect the commerce in the ports of the United States, protect homeland security and sea lift capabilities by saying if we need to move people, we have these specific ships, and if we need to move cargo, we have these ships that are built appropriately to assist and managed domestically to assist in
So
those
that means there
capabilities.
must be like what, thousands of ships
Yes.
that are capable of this?
Of course, and if by that you mean 99, there are 99 of these ships currently, according to
Like in the whole world.
Yeah, specifically the country, because they can only be made here and owned here. So if we were talking
99
globally,
qualifying ships, yes.
99 qualifying ships, and what that means is Puerto Rico has to spend an exorbitant amount of money to use these ships, and also they have a very limited supply, and also it's increasingly
And they're
limited
doing other stuff
availability.
too, right? Like it's not like they just all pause unless they're
Right,
doing
right.
under certain requirements.
Yes, so these are 99 ships that are, they have their own interests. So this particular act was waived actually after Hurricane Maria, but only for 10 days. We've done no such thing yet in the wake of Hurricane Fiona. So this is something that as emergency managers and as far as emergency management reform or taking a look at how we can help the citizens of our country, this is something we should keep an eye on, and maybe something that we as emergency managers need to dive a little deeper in, more than what Matt can tell you on a podcast. We're going to link the actual details here. But it really limits Puerto Rico's choices. It's driven up costs. And according to a 2015 report, it's driven up costs at least twice as high as neighboring islands to just get the essential items they need to respond to and recover after these storms. So as practitioners, I want to make sure that we're aware of these things, and if we're able to provide advocacy to help Puerto Rico or any territory or state in need, let's do it. Let's talk about what our options are.
Yeah, and I also think people need to understand, like, I think a lot of people think, well, it's an island, we'll just do a lot of airlift. Airlift is slow, super expensive, pretty limited in capacity. You know, it's great to get teams in and out of areas, and I know we can get USAR teams and stuff there pretty quickly, but it's not how you're going to recover an island. Like, you need just tons of stuff. Power equipment. You know, you're not going to be able to load enough power equipment onto C5s, or you're just going to be doing nonstop flights. And again, those aircraft also have other missions and stuff. It just complicates things. So it's really, really important. Hopefully, by the time this comes out, even Wednesday, more power will be back on there. I know it's being turned on in pretty large chunks as it moves down the island and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is great. But and it's an island. It's it's tropical paradise, but it also means that it's hot there. So like,
Yeah.
refrigerating your food and stuff is pretty important. Medications and hospitals and stuff. So power is a critical thing. Obviously, it's like the lifeline that none of us can do without.
Sure.
All right, so that's the hurricane situation. We know we'll definitely be back on that next week. But yeah, some interesting stuff with cyber attacks. One that specifically, Matt, you were impacted by recently.
I'm the victim here.
Yeah, Matt is the victim, and he's going to tell his story. Actually, before we start that, why don't we play our ads, and then we'll be right back.
How do you spell Doberman Emergency Management? EOP, OEP, HVA, HMP, Thyra, TTX, Drone, PDA. Whenever you need an expert, Doberman Emergency Management field experts are there for support. Contact an expert at DobermanEMG.com today.
Sawyer Products offer the best, most technologically advanced solutions for protection against sun, bugs, water, and injuries. Everything from insect repellents to water filtration. The filters are used in disaster situations all over the world, so whether you're in the backcountry or in the backyard, check out Sawyer.com to learn more. And we're back.
Are we sponsored by a meal kit yet?
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. No, we're sponsored by everybody. I want to get, so if you're interested in sponsorship, like we would love to have you sponsor, EM Weekly at DobermanEMG.com, or hit us up on social media. Honestly, hit us up on social media. I'm pretty active on social media. We are looking for sponsors. We also want stuff. I want to play with stuff. So if you've got toys that you want to show off and gadgetry, I want to break it. It's like my favorite thing. I have so many gadgets.
I want to break your gadgets.
Yeah, I've got
Zach
lots
Borst,
of tools,
EM
lots
Weekly.
of toys. So we have our sponsors, but we want more sponsors, and we want stuff to review. So and we're active emergency managers. So, for instance, I'm also on the state USAR team, and I've been getting a lot of heads up emails about stuff going on. So, maybe cool stuff I can bring out in the field and play with it. But, anyways, the cyber attack. Everything is cyber now. Like, it's all cyber. So as emergency managers, you can no longer like hand this off to like the IT person and be like, this is your problem, not my domain. It is 100%. Every disaster essentially is a cyber disaster at this point. You're going to have communication vulnerabilities, telecom vulnerabilities, as things are going off and online, exposure, like literally, like if you have a data center that's destroyed or damaged, it could be just hard drives with stuff on it. I think it was Morgan Stanley just got like some $200 million fine or something because they threw away a bunch of old computers that had people's data on it. So this is stuff that, like, when you're in the recovery and even response phase, you need to be aware of. And Matt recently was in his own situation where he got impacted.
Yes. Once again, of course, I'm the real victim here. And disclaimer, just as we are not meteorologists, I can't speak to it. Words are so hard. Just like we're not meteorologists, there's more vowels in there.
It's fine. I don't think people listening to a podcast care if you can speak.
Yeah, sure. Just as we're not weather experts, we're also not cyber pros. We just wanted this to be a standing piece of understanding for the industry. I think it's something that we have to keep as a standing segment here and continue to drive awareness. So this is your awareness level cyber news for the week. I tried to get a marriage license. So I went to the Suffolk County, New York. This is like 2 or so weeks ago now.
Yeah.
I went to the Suffolk County, Long Island, New York website. I went to the clerk's website, and it wasn't there. And I was like, of course, the thing that I need, the county just doesn't care. The county just doesn't care about me and me getting married. And then I later in the day learned that this was a massive cyber attack that impacted the Suffolk County 911 system, and all of.
Like, I don't care. I need something.
But what
on
about
my time?
me?
Yeah.
I don't want to go to my town right down the road. I want to go to the
Gotta get in
website,
my car or walk.
yeah.
In this economy,
Right. So this is still ongoing, and it's getting worse. And as we learn more, we start to learn about the actual impacts of what happens when organized crime takes to organized cybercrime. So this was a ransomware group. And as of today, as of the 26th, I just read the update that they've threatened to release 400 gigabytes of county and contractor data. And this is coming off the tail of at least 37 other local governments in the United States having been hit by ransomware just in 2022 alone. Suffolk County does not have cyber insurance. So they've paid, from what I've read, and we'll link our receipts in the show notes, but they've paid about $6.5 million on cyber investments and their infrastructure since
so at least
2019.
they're putting investments in, which is more than a lot of places can. So.
And I think they were working with an association of counties to try to obtain cyber insurance, but what I understand is that they weren't able to do that prior to this attack. So that leaves a ton of vulnerabilities, and it looks like this group has recently posted an image from some of Suffolk County's backup files, and as far as those being disabled through their vendor, and it's really interesting to see how far this group was able to get into local government. And it's horrifying because if they didn't have a redundancy in their 911 systems and able to revert back to other means of dispatching fire and rescue and EMS and police, what would that have left us?
I mean, I have used several radio systems, helped design actually a dispatch center where, a lot of the radio system relied on IT infrastructure to function. So your repeaters and stuff are no longer usually connected by radio. It's usually through some sort of, fiber or some other, just IP based system, because it's cheaper and honestly more reliable than and less complex. However, maybe not less complex, but it seems less complex for me because I didn't have to actually do the design. But sure, there's a lot of redundancy built into IP based systems that a radio one doesn't. So your repeater antenna pointing at or whatever you're pointing at your repeater and the antenna gets damaged. Now it doesn't work. Where IP can just sort of like bounce around to different nodes and figure it out and make it work. So the other thing that I think is really interesting about this is the fact that governments they're not super agile when it comes to purchasing stuff. So it makes it really hard to keep up with stuff. So the fact that it sounds like they were at least investing pretty heavily. If 6.5 since 2019, I mean that's a huge county with tons and tons of people. So I don't know what that sort of equates to, if that's a good investment or not enough. But it seems like a good amount of money.
I don't know where that adds up. As far as other counties ranking, as far as how much they've invested, and I don't know what was made prior to 2019. Yeah. It's just what the article has to offer. But I mean it doesn't. It doesn't seem like a small investment.
No, and as an emergency manager, I think I have also been in this situation where I've received a phone call from dispatch and said hey, our radio stuff isn't working. And we were like, okay, small agency, so super easy to resolve. We're just we're going to go to a handheld then. Maybe it's the console, maybe something else. So we'll just figure it out. We're all close by. We can make it work. But for a county 911 system, they don't have that luxury. So you're going to get the call, and it's going to be scary. So in this case, hopefully you can send out a mass notification of some kind and let your folks know that 911's down. Give them the local numbers to call if they need help. But if this is a serious attack, depending on what they're actually attacking, if they have credentials and stuff, they could also get into your mass notification system and kill that off as well.
I mean, or worse, send a conflicting message.
Sure. Yeah. And then it gets down to all right, what do we do now? If you have a giant voice system or PAs, you're going to do that. Can the state back you up and do stuff? Probably New York. They have a pretty good, system in place. There's some redundancy, I think, up at the state level that they could potentially send some stuff out on your behalf. But either way, it's not a situation you want to find yourself in. But when you're designing your plans, especially your continuity plans, you need to make sure that you're taking into account that your marriage license may not be available because everything is down. So have the backups.
Sure.
I'm still heavy into technology. I love technology. I think we maybe make it seem like it's more vulnerable than it is. But in this case, clearly it didn't work out. So.
Yeah, and people don't realize that something as simple as a marriage license could delay the ability to get health insurance benefits, right? It can delay a whole lot of actually essential things rather than what could just seem as a superficial thing that someone might want to marry their fiance.
If you're going through the effort of getting married, the least you can do is get your license. That's kind of the bare minimum. And if you can't do that, that's really frustrating. On that same sort of note, I took the dive. So I was looking to upgrade my phone. I've been an Android person forever. I know, whatever. It's people either love or hate it. I was always Android and PC. I have been sort of paying attention a lot to the recent Apple launch stuff with their new technology. Heavy focus on security, but then also heavy focus on a lot of safety stuff. So I'm all in. I'm an Apple guy now, except for I'm still going to keep my gaming computer. But
and
Apple is not quite there yet. And shout out to Gary Oldman, who's been posting stuff on LinkedIn for all their new stuff. But this type of situation is going to get even more complex because, as radios go fully IP based or you don't even use radio. So my last full-time emergency management job, I could reach the radio on, how did I just turn my light on? See, I'm still learning these Apple devices, these newfangled Apple devices. All of my radio stuff was run from, I could run it from my telephone. So we had a Motorola system that was connected via the interwebs, and I could switch between our P25 system and our Moto Turbo system. And it was awesome. now you can carry that all on your Apple Watch if you want to and communicate like that. And then what you're going to see is police and firefighters and EMTs now, these data systems, they're great for communicating. They're also getting really good at tracking your health. So if you're inside a burning building, you can monitor your folks and make sure that you don't have someone that's having some sort of cardiac issue, or you can even, kind of automate the system and say, well, this person's been exerting himself for this long at this level. They need a break. You got to get them out and get somebody else in there. So imagine now your all of this stuff is you're relying on this stuff in a response, and now it's taken over. Now, thankfully, again, one of the reasons I actually moved to Apple is the fact that it's a much more secure environment, at least from what I understand. And all my cyber security geek friends have been trying to get me to convert for a long time. So I trust them. But we as emergency managers need to be both willing to embrace new technologies and at the same time be well-versed enough to deal with the failures. And that doesn't mean go out and just have paper backups of everything. Not a terrible idea. But I am a huge proponent of using technology, especially when funding is tight. Maybe you can't get people, extra help in your EOC. Using technology to sort of augment yourself is one way of being more effective at your job.
Well, let's talk about the Emergency Operations Center, because
Sure.
I think there are certain segments of the industry that are really large proponents of it, but I think cyber professionals are long overdue to receive that invite to understand how the Emergency Operation Center operates, and at the same time, allow emergency managers to sit into the cyber equivalent. At least help us to collaboratively understand the language when we're talking about cyber threats and we're talking about intrusion. I think as far as, especially when it starts to touch public infrastructure, we have to be on the same page. We have to be speaking that same language.
Which means training and exercising with your folks. There's some great training. TEACS, I know, has a bunch of training on sort of interfacing your cyber operations with your emergency operations. But don't rely on other people. Just call whoever your IT person is, whether it's in-house or you have a contract or something. Bring them into the EOC so they're familiar with it, and try to get them to take some of the basic ICS stuff. So at least there's kind of talking the same language as you. At my one of my jobs, we exercised all the time with our IT folks. We always made sure they were in there. They were part of our emergency operations group, which is sort of also, it's the EOC team, but it's also where we come together and kind of do our internal policies and discussions and trainings and stuff. And we had a couple situations where we were attacked. Fortunately, they were able to sort of respond and protect it, but they knew to call us immediately and say, hey, we're under attack right now. So we need to sort of respond to this as though, it was, a physical security concern or something. They're in our system. So, so exciting stuff. I mostly am just enjoying all of just the gadgetry of the Apple stuff. It's new toys, and I'm pushing it as much as I can. I also like just data. I love looking at data and collecting data, and the amount of health data now that I have. So I can, as I'm exercising, I'm kind of able to track stuff at, my runs, where it felt like it sucked, some data to correlate that.
I've historically been very bad at sleeping. I do have issues with sleep.
Man. Yeah, we drink too much caffeine and can't stop thinking.
Yeah, caffeine and trauma.
Yeah, what a combination.
I've had for a long time, and just being able to, I wear my Apple Watch to sleep.
Yeah.
And it's one of the big reasons I bought it. And it's just been essential in understanding, and I have one of those apps. I'll maybe plug it in the show notes. Maybe they'll sponsor us. I have one of those apps.
Apple, I'm looking at you directly in the camera. Please sponsor us. Listen, you converted me, and Gary is a big part of that. Give him a raise.
Well, there you go. Shameless. So I have one of those apps that learns as it collects my data and gives me better advice on when to go to sleep and what to listen to, and it monitors like the decibels and the brightness and just gives me like quality metrics of how much sleep I'm getting and how good that sleep actually is. Everything from my oxygen to heart rate, and it also records me as I sleep.
Nice.
So it usually finds it like it records like the last like 15 minutes of whatever I'm like listening to fall asleep to. It catches me laughing to like Arrested Development or something.
Right? That's
it's usually it's John talking about the difference between
John's
readiness and
tones.
preparedness. Yeah.
Scardina reads you to sleep.
Sleep stories with John. I love the Calm app. I do. I'm a big fan of the Calm app as well.
So all right. So this will be our sort of final discussion point of the day. So the other thing I think that's super important about this, so emergency managers, so like firefighters, I've been a firefighter, I was an EMT, I even did some time as a cop. There's actually a pretty heavy emphasis, especially in the fire service now, of like taking care of yourself, and like they're doing all sorts of like new stuff to try that. So like there's yoga and meditation and like breathing stuff in firehouses now, like, you know, where, oh my God, I can't even imagine when I first joined the fire department, if I was like, you guys want to do yoga with me? I would have been ostracized so fast. Now we have much smarter chiefs and officers who are like, I'm not going to like beat myself up like every other generation. Like we need to take care of ourselves.
Oh, we're going to talk about we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. We're going to talk about psychological safety.
Yeah. So while emergency managers don't necessarily have their hands in the trauma in the same way that I did as a firefighter and EMT, you have a lot of vicarious trauma, and you have a lot of just that anxiety of like, you spend all day, every day thinking about what are the worst things that can happen in my community. And again, using this technology, you can kind of track that stuff down to like, you know, you're in the middle of the meeting and you're like, something is happening here, and you're getting alerted on your watch, like, oops, I'm like freaking out. I'm having either like some sort of anxiety attack or panic attack, or like recognizing this and trying to like identify that stuff so that you can work on it. Health issues are huge. Emergency managers, kind of, we're not active necessarily, right? I go out of my way to be active. And exercise, I try to run, and just in my office, I do push-ups, sit-ups. I have a kettlebell next to my desk. I try to stay active and just keep moving. But as a field, we are not historically that active, and it's because we kind of have the desk job of emergency response. So understanding the impacts of that on your health is really important, and these new technologies can remind you, get up. Like my phone or my watch notifies me at least every hour, stand up, and it sets goals for me. Go walk.
Can I tell you that as someone who's short, I'm a short person. I have.
As someone who's tall, I'm listening.
I have.
I'm up here though.
I have
talk up.
Yeah, I've taken my watch off in anger when I am standing, and it tells me it's time to stand.
Come on, little Matt, get up.
It has happened to me. I'm pretty sure that's the reason I no longer have my first Apple Watch, is because I was in an emergency operations center. We were like 3 days into some winter storm, and my phone's like, my watch was like, time to stand up. I was like, I haven't sat down today.
No, man, you need to get up. You're right at chair butt height. I can tell. I mean, I'm tall, so I wouldn't know anything about that. It sounds like a real problem. We represent both ends of the spectrum of the height in emergency management.
And of the hairline, of emergency management.
That's true, yeah. For those of you who are not on the visual side of this, Matt is aerodynamic. So he has no hair on the top of his head. It can be more clear, but yes.
I always say that no one took me seriously in emergency management until I shaved my head. Now my phone won't stop ringing.
The hair was honestly holding you back.
It was.
So technology and gadgets is going to be a huge component of our future discussions. IT is definitely going to be a huge component. So again, the takeaways from today: make sure you're doing your messaging. Make sure you're compassionate and you're open and you're honest. Don't be afraid to tell people what they need to hear. And just think like I like to use the sort of what am I telling my family right now? If I'm telling my family that they need to get out, that probably means that I need to tell my community within reason, obviously, like coordinate your messaging and stuff with everybody. But just when you're in the midst of a disaster, emergency management, I foot stomp this all the time. Like communication is almost the most important part of our job, because we can't do anything if people don't listen to us or we're not communicating clearly. And then the other thing is, with this other stuff, we want to like learn from you all as well. So like we're not experts in everything. So as we're talking about the stuff, like if there's someone who's a Jones Act expert and can provide information, like we want to know about that. We're happy to listen to PIOs. I've done the PIO role at all levels of government, not federal, but state, local, county. I've got to serve in those roles. So communication, I feel pretty confident on. I'm working on my Apple experience. So Apple, when you sponsor us, we can have one of your folks on to sort of talk about this. But we got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your communities. Like, subscribe, give us 5 stars, give us 2 thumbs up, high five us if you see us in the hallway. You can buy me a beer when we're at the conferences. I'm happy to chat over drinks. Although, to stay healthy, I have cut back on beer. But that's mostly because I found out that there's less carbs in whiskey. So
let this be your reminder. Let this be your Apple Watch reminder to stand
Yes.
up, take
stand
a
up.
walk.
Yeah. And we will be back next week. Thanks, Matt. Episode 1.
All right. We meandered. We made their little wiggles, right? We meandered, but we made it. We're back, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you. Bye.